Hello, my name's Sue O'Leary Hall. I've been with the Form 6s today and we've had a brilliant whole day of learning how to revise. So what we've been really looking at is the skills that they're going to need, not just for these summer exams that are coming up, but the same revision skills apply for summer exams in Form 6, the summer exams in LECB, and also when they start to move on to GCSE and then even A-level. Good revision is good revision. So what I'd like to do now is share with you some of those key messages so that you're able to support your child at home as they prepare for these forthcoming summer exams, and hopefully just to sort of give them a good foundation in how to revise moving forward beyond this year as well. The first thing to think about really is the revision environment. We would recommend students not revising in their bedroom if we can possibly avoid it. One of the things that we find when students revise in their bedroom is that sometimes they feel as though they can never get away from their revision. So if there is a place at home where they can just have a quiet spot with all of their books and materials handy, that would be brilliant. If that's not possible, then if they've got all of their revision materials in their bedroom, something really simple like having a throw to put over the top of all of that stuff before they go to bed, so they're not looking at it from their bed and worrying about it, would be a great idea. So that's just our sort of starting point in terms of where to revise. And then the next thing really is when to revise and how often. The tip here is very much little and often, especially for the pupils in Form 6 who probably haven't done exams before. This might be the first time they've faced any sort of exam process. So they may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed anyway by the thought of exams, and it's really important that we just give them one little bit at a time to build up their confidence, sort of bite-sized chunks of revision, as it were. So it might be that they just start with 15 or 20 minutes a night of revising a topic that they feel fairly confident with at first, and then building up to a little bit longer with that topic. And once they're feeling more confident with how to revise, then move them on to topics that perhaps they need to spend more time on and need perhaps a bit more help with as well. I think it's a really good idea if we can with young pupils who are learning how to revise to try and get them to make it as fun as possible. Because what we don't want is for them to dread these revision sessions and put them off and try and avoid it. So it's a really useful idea for them to revise with a friend some of the time, or to revise with a sibling at home, or perhaps even with you if you have a little bit of time in the evening or at the weekends. Revision doesn't always have to be a solitary activity. Now, if they are revising with a friend, there's all sorts of online resources that they could use to do that. So they could meet a friend online to do some revision together. There are things like online quizzes that they can create for a friend and get the friend to have a go at answering the quiz. We know that low stakes quizzes are a really good way of helping to reinforce memory retention of what pupils have learned. So what I would suggest is that at the end of each topic, they create a little quiz, perhaps online, or if they want to do it on paper, we'll give them some resources that they can take home and use paper resources for quizzes as well. It's really important though that they do test their knowledge, they do test themselves after each topic to make sure that it's actually sticking. Because what we don't want is for pupils to spend hours and hours highlighting and making lots of colourful mind maps and none of it actually be retained, because they really don't have time to waste on that. So thinking about the kind of activities that do help learning stick, we know that actually to enable pupils to revise effectively, they need to go through two processes. They need to break down what they've learned into smaller sections and then build it back up into preparing for the kind of questions they might face in the exam. So the breaking down part, first of all, the deconstructing part. There's lots of different activities they can use, and we've provided for the pupils in their take-home pack a kind of booster grid, if you like, of lots of different things they could use. So you've got things like mind maps. There's a variety of different things like just a minute, where they've got to talk about a topic for a minute without pausing or repeating themselves. There are a variety of different things that they could consider using on there. So we would really recommend varying the different ways in which they break down the topics, doing lots of different activities so it doesn't get too boring and samey. Then, once they've had a go at breaking the topics down and got the key points down for each topic, then they can do a little bit of a low stakes quiz, as I mentioned earlier, to test their knowledge of those sections of the topic. But then as they get closer to the summer exams, it would be really good for them to have a go at applying that knowledge to a past exam question. That's the reconstructing part of revision. So break it down first of all into small sections, learn those chunks if you like, test yourself on those chunks, quiz yourself on those chunks, and then reapply those chunks of knowledge to an exam question. So break it down, test yourself, build it back up again. We also know that when pupils are worried about exams, they do less well, because what happens is that when we feel stressed and anxious, the brain releases a chemical called cortisol, which triggers the flight or fight response. And that's great if you're trying to run away from somebody who's attacking you, but actually when you're facing an exam or a test, nobody's attacking you, you're not actually in any danger. So we need the fight or flight response to be stopped, because we know that when that happens, it blocks the ability to recall information from the long-term memory. So if you've, as a parent, if you've ever been facing an exam yourself when you were perhaps doing your GCSEs or A-levels, and you've had that horrible moment when your mind goes completely blank, that's what's happened. Your brain's released cortisol, it's triggered that panic response, and you've been unable to recall what's in your long-term memory. So a really useful tip for parents is to practice a little bit of mindfulness with pupils around that response. So we've got a really simple grounding activity that we would highly recommend that pupils have a go at during their revision period, so that they can use it on an exam day if they do feel a bit worried or anxious. So all they do is they use the 5 senses to re-calm themselves, if you like. So they would look around the room. They could do this in their bedroom with you, or you could do it in the car if you're driving somewhere. It's just a quick activity. You look around, you spot 5 things that you can see. You listen out for 4 things that you can hear. You find 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can smell. And if you can't smell anything, then get them to think of their favourite smell. It might be, I don't know, hot chocolate or something like that. And 1 thing that they can taste. And if they can't taste anything, again, their favourite thing to eat. It takes about 30 seconds, and it's a really quick, simple activity to do, but it's very useful from a psychologist point of view, because actually what we know about the brain is that it can't concentrate on 2 things at once. It's impossible to do that activity and also at the same time be worrying about an exam, because the brain can't concentrate on more than 1 thing. So if you can distract them with something like that and get them to learn how to distract themselves and calm themselves, that's a really useful thing to do before they go into an exam. The other thing to consider as well is if you do have a young person who does kind of get a bit worried and a bit anxious about this idea of exams, we have a model that we call the stress bucket, which I really like, and I use this with my little boy who's a bit younger than your children, and it works well with him as well. If we imagine that actually in our bodies we have a stress bucket, and when we are feeling anxious or stressed, that bucket fills up. And if we don't release any of that stress, then the stress overflows, and that's when we might see tricky behaviour. We might see our children snapping at us, or having a shout or a door slam or something like that. What's happening is that the stress bucket is overflowing, and the only way that the child can self-regulate in that moment is to have some kind of explosion of temper, or to suddenly go off in a mood or something like that. Now, we can actually help our children to co-regulate that stress as parents, and children of the Form 6 age and even a little bit older as well do need support with co-regulating stress. So if you imagine in their stress bucket there is a tap, and what we need to do is we need to turn the tap on a few times every day and release some of the stress. So simple things that we can do to help them release that stress might be getting outside, having a run around with a football. It might be doing any kind of exercise, any kind of physical activity. That certainly helps. It might be something like having a chat with a friend. It could be something like having a nice calm bath. Anything that is going to release a little bit of stress through the day from that stress tap, if you like, is really worth trying to get them to do. So enabling them to learn how to self-regulate through supporting them with, just a little reminder, do you need to release a little bit of stress out of your stress tap? This is a good time. Things like bouncing and swinging and running and jumping, those are really useful activities as well for releasing some stress. So if you find that you have a child who is getting a bit more grumpy than usual, or perhaps being more withdrawn than usual, this might be a sign that they need a little bit of help to co-regulate their stress. Okay, I think the big message really with the Form 6 summer exams is that they're the first opportunity that lots of these children will have had to sit an exam, and they are, if you like, a brilliant starting point. They're a brilliant starting point for teachers to say, okay, these are all the things that this pupil has done really well this year. These are all the things that they're shining at. And there's also things that perhaps they need a bit more support with, and that we can diagnose from these exams to plan our teaching to make sure that they get that support. So in a way, they're sort of diagnosing what the children can do. It's in no way a kind of final terminal result or anything like that. It's an ongoing process, this, all the way through their school life, right up to their GCSEs. So if they can kind of reframe it like that, rather than seeing it as, this sort of big scary end point of the year, actually it's just part of an ongoing diagnostic process. What can this child do really well already? What do they need a bit more support with? And really, the revision side of it is very much about getting used to organising themselves, doing some, variety of different activities to help their knowledge that they've been building up stick in their mind, getting into the habit of quizzing themselves regularly on the things that they've learned and building that back up. In terms of organisation, the one thing that I would recommend is, once they've sort of started with revision, once they've got comfortable with it, over time do try and encourage them to try and do the trickier stuff first at the beginning of a revision session, once they've worked out how to revise, and once they've worked out which activities they like and which ones work for them from the grid of activities that we're sending home with them. If they can kind of eat the ugly frog first, if you like, if they can do the hard thing at the beginning of a revision session while they're freshest and they've got the highest level of concentration, that would be really a good idea, so they don't keep putting it off and then the day never comes when they do the hard thing. Do the hard thing first and then save something that they enjoy for the end, and make sure they're taking plenty of breaks, lots of fresh air and exercise, good sleep hygiene, phone off or device off an hour before bed if they can, so they're not just checking their social media every sort of 20 minutes when they're supposed to be going to sleep. Just those really simple basic routines, getting those right through the revision period so that they're embedded before they start their summer exams. Okay, I will really look forward to seeing you hopefully in person next year. It would be great to be with you in person. It's been brilliant to be with your children today. And there'll be a little handout that goes with this vlog with all of the top tips on there as well. So lots of luck to your child for their summer exams, and to you as parents in supporting them. Take care and see you soon.